This is the D6 generation.
Dice are our vice.
Creating not too horrible content since 2008.
Are you crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Oh, I think we're well past that.
All right, welcome back. I'm here with Russ, and I'm Raef, and we are here for our regular-sized Pip. Russ and I are going to do another battle. This is battle 3, right, Russ?
Warmachine and Whiskey.
Warmachine and Whiskey.
The Whiskey is TBD. It might go right to tequila. We might go right to it's pre-mayhem margaritas now.
Okay,
so what we've taken to doing is we get together. So we made one error the first time we did this.
What did we do?
Which was we decided we were going to have post-mayhem margaritas the first time we talked about this topic.
Yep.
And we played our game, and then we went to get the margaritas, and we realized our game had gone a little long, and our favorite margarita place already closed for the evening. So instead, now we do pre-mayhem margaritas where we set up. So right now, Raef and I are looking at our table. Rafe's lovely table in his house, although we've decided Raef needs new tree templates.
Yes.
His tree templates are getting a little long in the tooth.
They're a little threadbare.
They're shedding a little fuzz. He's got this great snow table, but his trees have no snow. So we got to work on that.
The mat too, like the rub degrading.
Exactly. So we're gonna work on that a little bit here. We're gonna work on that. But however, one of the things we wanted to talk about is we got everything set up. So we're gonna set up. We got our deployment done. Then we thought we'd record this episode, and we'll tell you about what we're going to talk about in just a second. Yes. And then we'd go have our margaritas.
Correct.
Then we come back and play the game, so the game can go after the restaurant closes, and that's okay.
And there's a little bit of a metagame that happens there.
Yes.
I try to get Russ to drink 2 of the giant gobleted
Yes,
margaritas.
we're trying to both ply each other with tequila. Right. But we had the problem we have to get back home, so we have to be reasonably
So we don't
responsible.
drink too.
Yeah,
exactly.
we don't drink too much. But so today we thought it'd be fun. We've been talking a lot about Mark IV. And one of the big interesting things about Mark IV is they're still in the middle of sort of figuring out the exact armies that you can play. I mean, right now there's a bunch of choices, but they're and they're selling. We talked about this last time with Matt Wilson that they are selling pre-made boxes of the various armies, and so you got your new armies, your Mark IV armies, Prime.
Yep.
And then you also have your Legacy Mark IV armies, right,
from your old kit.
Yeah. And what we were thinking about is Raef and I have both been playing. I think what are you playing today?
Legacy still.
So you're playing Legacy.
Yes.
But I decided to go ahead and play Mark IV this time.
Yep. And let me jump in real quick.
Yeah.
If you're wondering, what are they talking about? You're just tuning in. We've got a bunch of different episodes on what's the Legacy.
That explain all
what's
that.
Prime, what's the app. And so we explain all that.
So think lists, right? Think sub-codexes in Games Workshop, different army lists for the same, what used to be the faction before,
Yes.
right? And some of them the Legacy stuff relies on the old models.
Yep.
And the Mark
with new rules, though, which are super fun.
Yeah, all new rules. They're all Mark IV compatible, and the confusing thing we talked about before. But the new Mark IV Prime stuff is based on the net new models that are coming out. But what's interesting is many of the net new models have very close analogies to the old models.
Yep.
Right? They're technically not replacing them. So, for example, in Signar's Storm Legion, which is one of the new armies, there are Storm Guard Legionnaires, which are basically guys with lightning swords and shields, just like the old Storm Guard. That's it.
That's it.
Legionnaires.
Yep.
But their base size is the same and their arm the same. It's just the new models look cooler and they're technically different. Their time has gone forward. They have improved technology, and
that's right.
So eventually there'll be a rule for the old Storm Guard, and there'll be rules for the new Storm Guard. I think I misused it. Storm Blades are the ones with sword and shields. Storm Guards are the halberds. Again, same thing, though. They're Storm Guard Legionnaires and not. So anyway, so what this allows you to do, though, and this is what Raef and I wanted to talk about a bit today, we have both bought the brand new army boxes for our respective lists. So I got the Storm Guard box.
Yep.
And you got the
Khador Winter Corps box.
Right. And what I've got, so what's neat about this, though, is because many of the models have old model analogous stuff.
Yep.
But there are also some net new things that don't exist in the old list.
Yep.
And so what's been fun is I've taken to using proxy models to be able to try the Storm Legion out.
Yep.
However, as I paint the new stuff, I can swap them out.
Yes.
So this allows me to not have to be like, well, I can't play my Storm Legion, or I have to play them unpainted, or I have to slap everybody together and then work on painting them so it looks bad on the table. Now I can I can try a new unit, still field the list, but use some old models that still look great on the table and don't cause any confusion. I assume they don't cause confusion.
I was going to say, and they're pretty close to WYSIWYG, if not completely WYSIWYG.
They're armed exactly what they're supposed to be armed with.
Yeah.
They do what you would expect them to do. Sure, their rules are nuanced different, but it's nuanced difference. It's not like giant difference.
So Russ and I almost mind melded on this. We didn't even have to talk about it. We agreed that we want to play fully painted armies.
Yes.
And so we both said really early on, we're like, ooh, let's feel free to play with our new box set if we want to, and we can proxy as long as everything's painted. Right. And so that's been enabling us to slowly paint the new army the way we want and not have to feel rushed. And yeah, there may be some, it's a little easier with the troopers, but as we start to proxy, like let's say I was playing my new list and I wanted to field a Great Bear, which is a new, a new Jack, I might just put the Behemoth down, and it's not going to be equipped quite or even anything like it, but at least it's a big beefy model. Right. And I can be like, that's the Great Bear. And Russ is like, okay, fine.
And that was
as we proxy.
And that's what got us to thinking maybe this would be fun to record. So we were about to talk through with each other before we start a game. So we've deployed our models, we're playing this scenario, and we thought it might be fun. We were going to share with each other, okay, what are you proxying and what are you not?
Yep.
And then I thought it might be fun to kind of share that as we talk about it, because it'll give listeners who maybe haven't gone this far with the Warmachine sort of like, oh, how does that work? Like, does it work pretty well?
Yes.
And both you and I have a pretty deep bench of legacy models, right?
Yes.
We have a lot of stuff. So what's kind of fun is I can look at my legacy stuff. What's also neat about this is there's models in my collection that I very rarely played, even back in Mark III, because they just weren't effective or they didn't make it to the table for whatever reason.
Yep.
And now it's fun because they pop in as a substitute, which is sort of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wanted to talk about how my painting went as I've explored with the new army painter.
Do you want to talk about the new armies first and the painting of them before we go? Okay, let's talk about painting.
No, I'm saying like both. We'll just
as we go.
Either one, yeah.
Cool. So do you want me to start? Or would you like to start?
You start. Let's talk about proxies.
All right. I'm just going to go down my list.
Okay.
And I'm looking at my list in the app. And again, Mark IV is completely in the app. There is no other way to get the rules. The rules are all digital. The cards are all digital. The list building's all built in there. It actually works surprisingly well. They've been updating a lot. So anyway, I'm looking at my app, and I'm going to walk down my app list, and I'm going to point to the models on the table, and I'll describe to you, our listeners, what I'm swapping out, what's replacing it. Most of my models on my table, even though I'm playing a Storm Legion list, most of my models on the table are proxy. However, many of them are models from the old Signar Storm Legion models. Yep. So I think it works.
The precursors, if you would.
So starting off, my Warcaster is actually a stand-in model.
Okay.
But I've done this before. So in one of the other big things about the new lists is there's only 3 casters per list, right?
Yep.
But there's these different army lists now, so there's lots of different casters that are still Signar casters. It's just that in the Storm Legion there's only 3. So the captain I wanted to use is Captain Madison Calder, and she is this mounted Warcaster, right? And I don't have her yet. She is actually, I don't know if she's out yet. She's one of the box casters you buy separately. She doesn't come in the army box.
She doesn't come in the starter box.
But as I think I talked about on the show before, I have had Striker 3, this old mounted Striker model, who is one of my favorite models ever. And I had never painted him up or anything else. So I used this as an opportunity to paint him up. Yep. And just talked about this last episode, a couple episodes ago. And then he is now the proxy again for this person, which works really well. She has many similar spells like Arcane Shield and things like that. And like she has Chain Lightning, which is strikery. And so she's really great. One of the things, though, that it's going to be fun is she also has Bird's Eye, which lets her ignore cloud effects, which last time I played Striker in this role didn't matter because you didn't have Sorsha. But looking across the table, I can see Sorsha standing over there, which will be helpful. So my first stand-in model is a cavalry caster, but it's horse for horse, so it works pretty well. And Striker is a Storm Legion guy himself. He founded the Storm Legion essentially, so that makes a lot of sense. Yep. Should I keep going, or are you going to do one?
Yeah, I'm going to add in. So and me as your opponent, since it's not like I played Striker 3 1,000 times, which is to say never.
Right.
It's very easy in my mind to be like, okay, that's Madison. I mean, he's on a horse, like it's she, you know. And I'm
except for the gender swap,
totally fine.
She has a pulse sword. Striker has his quickening blade there, but it's still a cool looking sword with electrical bits in it.
Yeah.
So she's got a sword that does electrical damage. He's got a sword that does electrical damage. It does Cortex damage on the hit, which was very similar to Striker hitting your Jack and stunning it basically. He can shoot an electro pulse. He can shoot lightning, which is a very strikery thing, given that he's part of the light. So it still works. Like,
Yeah, it
he
totally
feels
works.
like Striker. She feels like Striker, which is
Yeah.
great. All right. So moving on. Now, in Striker's battle group, which are the jacks that are attached to this battle group, everything else, we're going to go to substitutions now. So this is also interesting about Mark IV. So in each list, there's only, except for the legacy lists, where they list all the different war jacks that have ever existed, basically, there's really only 2 jacks in every single
That's right.
Mark IV list. However, they are configurable now. You can choose what's on each arm. You can choose different heads. And these things all have different point values, but they all have very different effects.
Yes.
So just because you have, and so ironically, or appropriately, the heavy jack for the Storm Legion is called the Striker in honor of Coleman Striker, who in this universe is dead, but in my alternate reality,
Not even this universe, because it's the timeline advanced.
it's
by
timeline
400,
advance. Yeah.
not-
So
we're
I've
not
got
in a
Striker
parallel
leading the army,
universe.
but also he's got a jack named after him because that's how
That's
cool he
really
is.
cool. Okay.
So,
all right, so the Striker Warjack is armed with what? Represented today by a hammersmith.
no, he's actually represented today by an ironclad.
An ironclad. Okay.
Which, and the way I was able to do that is because you can change the arms, and I do have the model. It's in the box. I just haven't painted it yet.
Yeah.
But what's cool about it is one of the arm options is a hammer, and the other arm option is a power fist. And the ironclad is a hammer and a power fist. And sure enough, if you look at the effects, the volcanic hammer, which is the hammer of the iron, has the ability tremor, which knocks everyone down within 2 inches, which is exactly what the ironclad used to do. So here's a perfect example of if you're a fan of the ironclad, right, and what it could do, and you wish you could have it in your Storm Legion, well, you can. It's just called a Striker, and you can build the arms that way, which, by the way, are all magnets now, so you can swap them in and out.
Yep.
But if you haven't got around to painting your Striker yet, or doing the particular arms you need, go ahead and grab your ironclad because it works just fine. It's the right
What
size.
head did you give him?
Well, I wanted his head to sort of match his abilities. So I gave him the head of Relentless Charge,
Okay.
which basically means when he's advancing as part of a charge, he gets Pathfinder,
Okay.
which isn't really ironcladdy before, but you got to give him some head. It's the cheapest one.
Yeah,
So,
that's fine. Okay.
all right. So that's my ironclad. So already I'm able to field my ironclad.
Excuse me.
Now, what's interesting about this is here's where it gets sort of interesting. I'm going to jump over now to another stand-in model. So I wanted to try out today against Raef a Journeyman Warcaster. And so one of the solos available is Lieutenant Sarah Brisbane, the daughter of Brisbane, who I played against Raef last game, the guy with the jetpack and everything, right? So she is a Journeyman Warcaster, and so I decided to add her to my list. Now, what's interesting is she is armed with a galvanic spear, which is basically a big, long, pointy electric spear. Well, I have the old Catherine Lattimore mounted and on foot from back in the day. We never really played very much. I liked her a lot. I loved her model, but her rules just weren't all that great. But on foot, Catherine Lattimore is running around with a giant galvanic lance, which looks an awful lot like a galvanic spear. So there you go.
There you go.
And then all of her spells, well, it's her. So you need a female model running around in Storm Legion armor, which she has because she's got all that electric lance thing going on there. So she's perfectly set up for this situation. And because she's a Journeyman Warcaster, she can also have a Warjack in her battle group, and in fact must. So I do have 2 Warjacks in my army, but only one of them is under Coleman Striker, which I wanted because Coleman has, or the person playing Coleman, Captain Madison, she has my favorite spell now, Chain Lightning, which Raef really liked last game. Chain Lightning is a high focus casting spell, so only having 1 Warjack to manage is pretty nice.
Gonna help.
So my Journeyman Warcaster, she's going to have a Jack with her.
How many focus does she generate?
Interesting that you asked that question. She generates 4 focus.
Yikes.
So not a lot, but enough to be dangerous. She also has 2 spells, which will be fun. But my favorite spell that you'll really enjoy is Open Fire, which only costs 1 focus, and a Jack in her battle group can shoot for free during her activations by casting on it.
Yikes.
Oh, and what is that Jack in her battle group, you ask, Raef? Well, I'm glad you asked that.
I didn't ask.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about it anyway. So the Jack in her battle group, so as I mentioned before, each of the new Mark IV factions only has 2 Warjacks. And so they have 1 heavy and 1 light, but they're totally configurable. So if you look at this list and you're thinking there's only 2, when you go through all the configuration options, it's just as many as you had before. But now you only got to buy 2, and because they're magnetic, you can switch them in and out. So I was like, last time I played Raef with a stand-in list, I figured out that with this Courser, I could make a Lancer because one of his heads gives him arc node, right? And you can put a spear on one arm and a shield in the other. And the shield, even you hit him with a shield, it removes a cortex point. It's exactly a Lancer, right? Exactly a Lancer.
Neat.
So you can make a Lancer. Or, as Raef is looking at this model, or playing against Raef, the Lancer is fun. And the Lancer's great against Raef's Winter Guard because they're all light infantry and the lightning from cast through his cortex is really good. But I had a hunch based on today's mission I was going to be seeing a lot of Man of War and very heavy jacks, especially since the last game was Raef's first big victory over me, which had a lot of Man of War and very heavy jacks. And so I felt like you were going to lean into that a little bit.
Yep.
And so I was like, what I really need here is a hunter. But of course, in Mark IV Prime Storm Legion, there is no hunter, but you can take the Courser, which is the medium jack, and for one arm, you could give him a mag bolter. Guess what a mag bolter does?
Halves armor.
It is POW 6 armor having gun, exactly the same as the hunter in Mark IV has. And guess what I can give him for his head? Advanced deployment.
Oh, advanced
deployment. So he's an
deployment.
advanced deploying hunter. And in fact, the current hunter in Legacy does not have advanced deployment. So the Courser hunter variant, and I'm obviously using a hunter model, is actually more like the Mark III hunter, which is also more points, than the... So by changing the heads, what you can do is you can give him like lightning resistance so he can hang out next to Storm Guard. You can give him advanced deployment so he's more like a scouty dude.
That's neat.
What also is interesting that he picked up is his left arm. Now the hunter's right arm, is his other arm, is a axe, right? Well, so I needed a combat weapon. Well, sure enough, it has a close combat weapon, but it's called a voltaic punching spike.
Okay.
Which it's a POW 12, which I think is about what his axe is. But normally the hunter's axe has no special rules. But this guy's axe has critical armor piercing. So on a crit, he has your armor stat. So now he's a hunter that's good hunting up close, only on criticals, or shooting.
Yep.
But I really like this combo because with her spell that can let him shoot again, he basically can shoot twice a turn. And normally hunters can't use focus to reshoot again. So this gives him 2 shots a turn, which makes him twice as deadly. And I know how much you like to get shot by my hunter.
I love it.
This is very exciting.
Yep.
So again, what's really cool about this, I'm able to go to my legacy models. And Raef, what do you think? You're going to look at this and know exactly what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. No problem.
Which is fun. So those are my 2 battle groups, meaning I got Striker and AKA Madison and her big, giant, heavy ironclad / Striker Jack with a hammer. And then I've got my Journeyman Warcaster and her hunter. Making sense so far?
Totally.
All right. Now I'm going to move down my list.
All right.
And the next thing on my list...
Got some big hulking blue dudes.
Yeah. So as we're moving across the battlefield here, in the center of my table deployment here, I have... This is one of the new units. So these are Tempests. They're called Tempest Thunderers. Okay. And the Tempest is a new armor unit, infantry unit in the Signar Storm Legion forces. There is no analog to them in the past. What I mean by this, these are trooper models on medium bases. As far as I know, Signar never had trooper models on medium. So this is a whole new thing. So this is what was fun. These are actually my new Storm Legion models from the box. So what I was able to do was just paint that one unit. And because I have all the other stand-ins, I can get them to the table this week.
Yeah, and play a whole new list.
Brand new models from the new 3D printed technology, painted. These are the same ones that I tweeted about trying the different painting techniques on, the slap chop and the gray chop and the traditional white primer. And so they're on the table in the center of the table, and they are what they are. They're Tempest Thunderers. You want to know about them?
I do. And I was thinking, I was talking to Craig the other day because he did his episode on painting. Yeah. And it's true. I don't know where, it's got Black Chop? I'm suddenly forgetting the name.
Gray Chop?
No.
And Slap Chop.
Slap Chop. Yeah. I don't know where that term came from, but what's really funny is that's how Craig has painted since the dawn of time.
Yes, correct.
Since we've met him, Craig was always the best painter, and then he kind of taught, or we've learned from him, and we were like, hey, how do you do that? And he's always painted prime black undercoat, dry brushed either bone
lighter shades
or white, and he would go from there. Now, I understand from Slap Chop that they do another coat of white on top of that. So I think we should either call it Slap Chop anymore. We should call it either Craig Chop.
Oh, Craig Chop.
Or Gallant Chop.
Gallant Chop.
We've got to give it, I think Craig Chop.
Well, it's funny because the only reason I learned about Slap Chop was that I tweeted what I was doing with these guys, and I described what I was doing, and I described and in my head it was the Craig technique. And so I was like, I'm describing the Craig tank. And everybody's like, oh, you mean slap chop? And I was like, do I? And the funny thing about the slap chop thing is,
do I?
It only came out, a particularly well-known miniature painter, he's a very good painter and YouTuber, talked about it in the spring, I'm forgetting his name, unfortunately, in the spring of 21. And everybody who's painted at any length of time knows this technique. Zintadel's another name for it. So it's not, but what's nice about what he's done is he gave it a name that we can all easily describe what it is. So as soon as you say slap chop now, everybody knows it.
Yeah,
so
but we're going to rebrand that to Craig Chop.
Craig Chop,
and Craig's won a Golden Demon, folks. So this
I don't know what the chop part means.
This is no
the
slouch.
slap part I kind of get. What's the chop about?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But then when we're referring to gray chop, we'll talk about during my segment of painting.
Yes, okay. So these guys are raring to go. What I like about them, so they're big medium-based dudes. They're Signar's answer to the Man of War. So Signar have been fighting Khador for years.
Yep.
As their technology advances, story blah, blah, blah. They have little, volcanic generators on their backs, or voltaic generators on their backs. Basically power armor. They do pair, if you squint, they kind of look like Games Workshop Space Marines just a little bit. If you just squint a little bit.
The big new Primaris ones, you mean.
As an Ultramarine player, I don't mind that at all. So they kind of have nostalgia for these guys. And they're all armed with these big, heavy, what they call voltaic blasters.
Okay.
And they're guns with a bayonet sort of weaponry on them there. And they clearly have parts that are supposed to be glowing with all the electrical energy. These babies are range 12, rate of fire 1, AoE 2. So they fire like balls of lightning out at you, POW 13-8, and critical thunderclap. So when they crit, models hit without resistance to electricity get knocked down.
Ouch.
So they do critical knockdown. They have AoE blasts. That's their jam. They're not so great in hand-to-hand combat. I mean, they do it POW 12, which isn't completely shabby, but they're not going to take a jack out or anything. And worth noting also, they have the crossed sword and axe icon, which basically means they can charge you, shoot you, and stab you with a bayonet, which is pretty neat. They each have 5 wounds, also arm 17. So their arm is not quite as good as the Men of War, but that's still really good for infantry, and 5 wounds in a Signar list is pretty sweet. So I'm excited to see how these guys do today. How do they make you feel? You nervous about them?
I don't like the AoE. That's scary.
Yeah, but in the trench today, there's a big trench mission today. There's trenches on both sides. Trenches are blast resistant, so I'm not so sure they're going to be super effective today.
Maybe not.
Maybe when you jump out of the trench and try to run across the field, that's a little kick.
That's what I'm thinking.
I'm also a little worried about your high armor. I don't know that POW 13 blasters are going to really take them out. But we'll see. Yep. I just wanted to feel them.
All right, who are these guys hanging way off to the left?
On the left-hand side, I'll speed up now. I have all these are older models, so they're substituting, but it's my old Storm Guard, which are the ones with the halberds. I got a unit of 5 of them, and my old unit of Storm Blades, got a unit of 5 of them. There are, in fact, Storm Blade Legionnaires and Storm Guard Legionnaires, so they're standing in for those. The newer models are still in the same base sizes, so no problem there. But they are a little bit, the models themselves are a little bit bigger.
Bigger, yeah.
They're definitely cooler sculpts. Like the shields on the Storm Blades on the old stuff are like bucklers.
Okay.
On the new guys, they're like bigger, and they have electrical bits on them, which is cool because they now have shield wall, which they didn't have before, things like that. So, anywho. But there's one dude in here that's an interesting substitution.
Wait, what do they do? What do the big guys, the big glaives do?
Oh, fair enough. So the Storm Guard Legionnaires, they're the ones in the front, and they're all armed with a halberd. Okay? So because they're armed with halberds, they all have special rule called Jack Hunter.
Ooh, ouch.
Which means they get an additional die when doing melee and damage rolls against jacks. Won't help too much against your Men of War, but they also have set defense, which is the same as it's always been. So if you charge me, -2 to hit. And their halberds are voltaic. I gotta get better at saying that. Voltaic halberds, which basically means they have they're POW 13, and they have critical disruption, and which means your jack would lose the ability to receive focus next turn. Yep. And they have brutal charge, which means they get +2 to charge attack and damage rolls, or charge damage rolls when they hit you. So they're pretty good. They're basically the big thing is set defense and Jack Hunter.
Okay.
So that's their thing.
No combined arms.
No. Behind them are the Storm Guard Legionnaires, and maybe I should have switched them. But the Storm Blade Legionnaires. So the Storm Blade Legionnaires are behind them. They have 2 special rules. Shield Wall, which you know that rule well. So if they're base to base, +2 armor. And I should probably fix the deployment. Let's just do that right there. Yep. And Polarity Shield. These are their bigger shields, So these guys cannot be targeted by a charge or slam power attack.
Huh.
So by a construct. So basically your jacks can't charge or slam them because their shields repel them. And they have voltaic swords, which are POW 12 with electro leap. You probably remember that. They leap out, electric leaps out. And they have their galvanic shields, which is also a close combat weapon as well. Interestingly, they don't have a special rule, but because they both have two close combat, they can hit you with their shield and their sword at the same time. Nice. The shield has no special rules except that they have shield wall and shield and polarity field. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Last dude. We're almost done.
The Solo.
There's a dude here in the middle, a Solo, and he looks like an old Storm blade, but he's got a bigger blade with a gun built into the blade. I'm using him as a Legionnaire officer, who is a new Solo. And the officer looks like this. It's just a new version of him. So he's actually the right model for this. So what they did is you'll notice when you get squads now, or units, they took out the special sergeant models.
Yep.
And they took out the special banner models, and now you buy them separately. And they generally apply to more than one unit. So you can decide which unit to attach them to. And some of them would just become solos, like this guy can run around, but they have buffs they can use on infantry like them, basically. So they basically run around and make the men better. So that's what he is. He's called an officer. He's a Legionnaire officer. And he's got he's got a sword with a gun built into it, but this sword is better range because the other swords just shoot like short range electricity. This thing fires 10 inches, POW 12, has leap, both the sword strike and the gun, and he can charge, he can attack with the sword and the gun in the same thing. But his big thing is he has battle plans.
Oh,
he's a smarty.
Battle plans.
So basically, anytime during his activation, he can choose one of 3 battle plans. I think you guys like this too.
Yep.
So
I don't know if they're the same battle plans, but I have.
One of them, which I think is going to help this mission and why I took him, Desperate Pace, range 5.
Yes.
So I target friendly, small, or medium-based Legionnaire units, which is pretty much everybody. And that unit gets a +2 movement to their normal movement.
Ooh, nice.
So they can speed people up. He can also give precision strike. So anybody within 10 inches of him, if he gives this rule, can ignore other friendly models when determining line of sight. And friendly models can move through other friendly models.
Oh, fancy.
So we get out of each other's way. And then he also has special orders, which is range 5. So he can target a friendly faction warrior model or unit. And if that unit is in range, it gains reposition 3.
Okay.
Which basically can pivot around. So he's really good at movement.
That's good.
Which I really thought in a big trench battle, he'd be really helpful. Better than a standard bearer. So that's why I took him.
Okay.
Whew. That's my army, Granger.
All right. This is what I'm thinking.
How do you feel about the repness? Does it feel like you know what you're looking at?
The rep's really good. Let's describe for the listeners like what this mission is, and then I'll do a quick review of
your army,
my list, and then I'm thinking like there might even be I don't know how we doing on time, and then we could talk painting as like the special.
Maybe we'll do the painting as a special segment.
Yeah,
maybe that'll be our Patreon episode.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Okay, so we're about half an hour in. I think we have time for. We got to hear your army, and we got to talk about the mission.
So let's do my army because it's quick.
Okay, let's do your army because it's quick.
So I'm not playing a Mach 4 list. I have been winning with this army, but that's not why I didn't switch. I got confused. I want to play these new models called the Men of War Suppressors.
Ooh.
And I got confused, and I thought
these guys are also have Gatling guns on each arm.
Gatling guns.
And they're in big Man of War armor. Like bigger, like large bases.
Yes. And what's cool about the fluff is...
Yeah, they look awesome.
My current fluff, the Man of War armor I am now, is steam-powered.
Yeah.
And the guys in the fluff, they can get cooked. There could be malfunction because Men of War have to be like super brave.
Right.
Because they know they could just be cooked alive and
awesome.
Roasted, you know? So it says in the new Khador fluff that we've stolen or borrowed a little bit of Signar technology, and we have some different types
that
of
makes sense because time's advancing, yeah.
Not turbines, but new technology, new tech. And so our new Men of War don't get
low heat steam engines.
We don't get cooked inside our armor.
And what's a bummer about those guys is they're one of the as Matt explained in the last episode.
Yes.
You can buy your big starter box army, which has a lot of great stuff, like the whole big. But then there's going to be add-on units.
Yes.
And that's one of your big add-on units.
That's one of my add-on
which
units.
are unfortunately still about a month away, I think.
Correct. Now, here's why I didn't proxy them, though. I got confused on the base size. And I thought the new ones were a base size that I didn't own. Mm-hmm. And even though we were proxying, I'm like, I'm not going to proxy a base
You could actually use
size that
3
I
large
don't have.
jacks with big guns.
I know, but I got confused as to the base size.
Yeah, they're gonna look awesome.
So
Those
that-
models are so cool. I'm so jealous of them.
That's why
I love the
didn't feel
Kator
it.
model. Look great. And you do such a good job painting them. It's such a joy to see them over there.
Oh, I don't know if you noticed, but I repainted Sorsha.
Well, let me see. I'm going to
So-
look at her closely here.
So as
Ooh.
we're, I shouldn't say repainted.
You added some detail and highlights.
I
like
redded her up
Yeah.
and I turned the white to the bone.
I like it.
So
looks
Sorsha is in her Man of War armor
She looks good.
and she's with Beast 09.
Yeah.
And I tried to.
So you're all rep because
I'm
you're
rep.
using
I'm 100%
legacy
rep.
rules, so which is really
Yep.
nice. I appreciate that.
3 mechanics like we did last time.
Yep.
3 Men of War.
Now this is interesting. I need to pause you there. So
Yes.
in an earlier episode, we talked about in one of the games you were kind of like, mechanics, are they really that good? Because they're a card now. So there's one of the command cards is you can basically heal D6 points on a jack.
Yep.
So you would like, as we played the very first game, you took the mechanics, you thought the mechanics rules looked great on paper, and then you got out and you saw us both playing these cards, and you're like, I'm going to go take mechanics again. I've seen you play mechanics pretty much every freaking game.
Yeah.
So the card didn't make it worse.
No, the card didn't make it worse. First of all, the mechanics won the game
They did.
last
They
time,
did.
right?
They
Like,
did.
if it wasn't for them holding an
And
objective.
we should say I was dominating in Mark IV. You may remember I was teasing Raef one episode about how I'm undefeated in Mark IV.
Yeah.
And then we started playing this campaign, which is a blast. As a casual gamer, these missions, some of them, and we're looking at them like it's a little, maybe the first one was a little unbalanced or whatever, but we're like, it doesn't matter. It's such a cool story.
Yes.
And Raef has been creaming. So Kator's like invading the beaches of Signar here in this story. We're now in the 3rd mission of this, and you have not lost.
Not lost.
Which is making it harder because what's also cool about this campaign is the victor of the prior battle gets a little boon
Yes.
in the next game. So really the pressure's on me.
We didn't talk about on the air how I snatched victory from my own jaws of defeat, but then snatched victory back again. Did
Yes.
we didn't talk about
We did
that.
not.
Did we?
But maybe
All right.
we can talk about it too. But that was so I'm excited to see that mechanics are back.
Mechanics
So
are back. They work well for 2 reasons. Even though we have the card that can remove D6 points, I put a spell on the beast called Redline. It can go on any jack. But what that does is he gets extra movement, but he basically overcharges his engines, and so you have to roll for damage. And so the mechanic run up and suck the damage off.
Nice.
Is the theory. And they won the game last time
because they're this
by
nice
holding an objective.
affordable unit that can run around
Yeah,
and
2
not need to
points.
be in the control radius and everything.
Yep, don't need focus.
Right.
They're
They're their own
2
little
points.
dudes. Yeah.
So that's it. Sorsha, Beast 09, 3 mechanics, 3 Men of War, Kodiak, 3 Men of War, a Mounted Dracoon. That's it. All legacy. I do want to say for Khador players, though, that the old Men of War in the legacy rules are super fun to play. I always used to field them, as Russ knows.
Yeah.
I never did the other variants just because I loved the old guys, but they weren't that tactical. They could either shoot their shield cannon or they could hit with their axe, which is nice. They have a 2-inch range and they're pretty hefty. But now, the new legacy rules, they have 3 attacks, which is really fun.
Yeah.
So they can hit with their axe, they can shoot with their shield because they have the gun thing, and then they can shield bash. So that makes them much more viable in the new lists.
Yeah, so that's a good list. And we should say we're playing 50 points. So it's a
Playing
pretty
50
meaty
points.
list now. It's sort of the medium-sized game now, right?
Yep.
And let's talk about the scenario. So in the 3rd scenario, in the first scenario, I was trying to defend a lighthouse.
That was the first
And
scenario.
you took the lighthouse out. You had to destroy it. So that enabled your invaders to more easily get to the beach. And in the second scenario, we actually had little cutouts of boats because you were doing a beach landing. So your advanced forces took at the lighthouse, then the bigger force came in on boats. That was the one where I thought I had you. Like I got really overconfident. I thought I had you. And then in the last minute, great move, Sorsha comes in. It was a great moment because your jack died at the end because of the red line. My Hammersmith died, which let you get the last objective, and you needed 2 objectives to win. So that was awesome.
Yep.
So now here we are at the 3rd scenario, and this one's really interesting, Rafe. So go ahead and describe the table. Like what's going on here?
Yeah. So what we have now is both where we've done the beach landing in the fluff of the missions. Okay, and these are called the Black Tide campaigns. We've got 2 trenches in the middle, somewhat of the 6 inches off of the center line.
So both sides are now in a stalemate, sort of like near the beach. You pushed in a little bit. And now it's like World War I trench warfare.
Yeah. And so I'm deployed in looking at my trench. Russ is deployed looking at his trench. We have to both hold the trench, take a trench from the opposing army, and also have the option to grab flags.
And these trenches
for
are
victory
like
points.
pretty near the center of the table. So they're outside of our deployment zone. Yep. And they're the 3 inches wide, and they're the full length of the table on both sides.
Full length.
So it's like there's these giant trenches. And then between the trenches, there's these like 2 objective markers called flags. Right?
And dead man's land. No terrain can be placed.
No terrain. So the middle of the table is like dead zone, like
Dead zone.
death.
Yes.
Which I'm kind of excited about having a Tempest for this. Situation.
Yeah. I'm not.
So what are you thinking about this?
And
how do we win this scenario?
So there's multiple ways to win. Way number one is they call it now control the leader versus kill the leader. If you do that, it's like Quidditch rules, like we talked about. Game over, and you get 1 war chest point, which is how you win the campaign. Okay. The other way to win is at the end of your opponent's turn. If you are 5 control points ahead of your opponent, you win. The game ends because you're 5 ahead. Now, again, that may sound easy, like, oh, I've got to get 3 points from being in Russ's trench, 1 point for 1 flag, and 1 point for being, easy. Well, no, because if he stands one little guy inside my trench, I don't get that point.
These are literally 4 foot wide trenches, right? So they're running the length of the table. And so to contest, you just need 1 model in there fully in.
Yep.
And they just need 1 model fully in to control it. You get 1 point for controlling the trench on your side of the table.
Correct.
You get 2 points for controlling the trench on your opponent's side of the table. Oh, 3. You're right. Sorry, 3, because it's hard. And then you get also... Is it a point per flag?
I think it's 1 point per flag.
Yeah, so in 1 turn, you could theoretically get, 2 for yours, 1 for a flag. You could get 3, 4, 5.
1 for yours, 3 in your opponent, that's 4.
And then
4
and
5 if you get
both flags.
But you'd have to be a nothing.
You'd have to be,
which is not going to happen.
Not going to happen, right.
Right. So it's going to be an interesting, like...
You have to be 5 up, not first to 5, but 5 up.
Right.
And if no one gets 5 ahead by the 7th turn...
Yep.
Then who's ever a win on command points wins. And if you win by command points, whether it's being 5 ahead or after the 7th turn, you get 2 war chest points instead of 1.
Right.
So assassination still ends the game and gives you a victory, but in the campaign terms, you're better off winning on mission.
Correct.
Right.
And I'm so far up 2 missions, so I'm up 4 war chest points.
Yes. It's not looking good for Signar.
Although this list has me pretty nervous. So Russ was he said to me, I was kind of figuring you've been winning with the Men of War list. That's not why I chose it. It has been fun to win with it. I chose it for 2 reasons. One was, again, I didn't think I could proxy the new list, which I wanted to try. But also, second, I was looking for less cognitive load. It's been really fun to play missions, and I didn't want to have a brand new list with 2 new warjacks, and because and a new warcaster and kind of be staring at my phone the whole time. The app. I wanted to be like, okay, and I also felt like I made some mistakes with my other army. The Legacy Army last game, so I wanted a second crack and not have too much of a cognitive load. So that was my reasoning, although they have been winning. So,
yeah, I like that.
So we'll see.
I'm a little worried about the cognitive load on my side, actually, because I have a Warcaster and a Journeyman Warcaster. And then I also have I have a lot of synergy stuff, because I also have the commander over there giving the infantry guys orders.
Yep.
So I'm going to have to do a lot of thinking on this. And then remember all the stuff that's in flight.
Yeah, that's why the Goblet of Margarita is going to be really
I'm worried about that. One mechanic we should mention, too, I'm really enjoying the mission design.
Oh, yeah.
There's one more thing in here. So you have to, there's a standard bearer. They call it a flag bearer, which gets confusing between the flag objectives. But
not that.
One model in your army, one warrior, which basically means a dude in a unit. You put a token on him that makes him the flag, I'm going to call him the flag bearer.
Yeah, flag bearer. Yep.
So if your flag bearer in this turn moved further away from his edge of the table than he started,
basically towards the enemy,
then all of your models who are closer to your edge of the table than the flag bearer,
i.e. behind your flag bearer,
get +2 speed. So basically you're encouraged to charge your flag bearer forward, and your whole army gets faster and inspired by this.
Yes.
But of course, you're charging the flag bearer closer. And if your flag bearer dies, there is a pick up the standard thing.
Yep.
But you can also kill the flag bearer and take their standard. I think that would give you a CP, actually, if you pull that off.
I don't think so. You keep saying that.
I want that to be a thing.
But I don't.
All right, I'm going to look that up.
I don't think that's a thing.
So what's your confidence level for this mission?
All right, while you're looking that up, I want to go back to last mission a little bit. I'm not going to explain it blow by blow because I think it'd be boring. But Russ and I had, for game 2, I made a blunder with one of my models, right? So it was a tight game. He had the edge. I don't think I could have won. And I make a big blunder. And I charge my beast in charge of his hammersmith. And he gets all gleeful, rubs his hands together. He's like, oh, my God, I can't believe you did that. And I'm like, I just snatched victory from the jaws of... No, is that right? I snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. And that's what's fun about Warmachine, guys. So if those of you have played in the past and you liked the ability on the turn of a dime to win or lose, that's still here in the game. So it's still the game of Warmachine, right? And so what's fun, though, is just using the new rules. Now, what's also fun, though, was I was able to pull it off. Again, I'm not going to do the blow-by-blow of it, although it's burned into my memory as a highlight reel. Maybe as a bonus segment or something. I was able to pull it off because of some of my Army's synergy. So that's also what's fun about Warmachine is I made a blunder.
Mm-hmm.
Russ capitalized on the blunder, but it wasn't over yet. I had a Hail Mary pass.
You did. It was a very Hail Mary
I made 2 Hail Mary passes.
You did.
Including with rolls.
Yep.
And I pulled it out. I pulled my victory back. And then in a great cinematic moment, the beast who pulled the victory out dies. So it's like, it was that time when you sacrificed your treasure. Yep. It reminded me of that little story.
It was awesome. It was awesome. So we should wrap up. But
all right, tell me about the flag. Do you get the point?
Yes,
what?
in the scoring section,
okay,
it says if a player's model advancement ends its movement in contact with an enemy flag token. So when your flag bearer dies, you put a token where the guy was, because one of your other guys could pick up your own flag. But if I can get one of my models to touch Raef's dropped flag token, then I can choose to destroy the flag token.
Okay.
And if a flag token is destroyed, the destroying player gets 2 CP.
Oh, you do get some. Okay.
And the flag token is removed from the table. Right. So there's another 2 CP out there for grabs.
I got to bring back here. I changed flag tokens, but it was smaller. So
you just need a flag token of some kind.
Yeah, but it has to be the same size.
Oh, it's the same size as mine to be fair. Yeah. So that's huge. So
that could swing things.
You're encouraged to charge forward with your flag guy, but it also makes him a juicy target. Yes. So we'll let you guys know how this turns out. Keep an eye online. We'll probably mention it in a future episode.
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by emailing us at info@thed6generation.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. Thanks for listening and happy gaming.